What is the lifespan of a bald eagle? Um, in captivity, they can live over 40 years. I think the record in the wild is about 35 years. We've had 30-year-old birds here on Catalina a couple times. The average, though, I would say if they make it through their first year is probably more like 10 to 15 years. If they get ill or injured and can't hunt, then there's not, another bird is not going to bring them food. How long does it take for the chicks to hatch? Well, the typical incubation period is 35 days. It's generally a couple days longer than that because of incomplete incubation during the laying of the clutch of eggs. So, for instance, the first egg may take 37 to 39 days to hatch after it was laid. The actual hatching process takes about 48 hours. So the first stage is called an internal pip, and that's when the chick will actually break into the air cell inside the egg. So you won't see anything external, but that's when they start to breathe and vocalize. What causes the actual breaking of the eggshell is CO2 buildup inside the egg, and it gives the chick spasms in its neck, and causes a little egg tooth on their beak to hit the eggshell and break open. So about 24 hours after the internal pip, you get an external pip, and that's just the first little break in the eggshell. It's usually just a really slight rise that's hard to see. And then over the next 24 hours, that usually gets a little bit bigger, and then the actual hatching, opening up the egg shell, really only takes about an hour, and it's just the chick rotating in the egg with muscle spasms, and just sort of like a can opener opens up the end of the egg. Let's see. What is the lifespan? Oh no, we did that one. Do both parents take turns leaving the nest to get food for the chicks? When the chicks are young, the female generally stays on the nest and the male brings the food. As the chicks get older, as they are now on the sauce's nest, both adults will go off and hunt. And in another couple weeks, when the chicks are essentially full grown at 8 to 9 weeks, the adults are going to just tend to fly in, drop off food, and leave, because the chicks get very aggressive towards the food at that point. What is the size of the largest nest I have seen? We don't tend to get the really deep nests like the Pacific Northwest does in trees. The biggest nest I have seen is here on Catalina Island at our Pinnacle Rock nest, and it's actually just on a sort of a rock outcropping on a cliff. And I can actually lie down in that nest with my hands over my head and not touch either side. So it's about 8 to 9 feet across and maybe 5 feet wide. So it's a longer, narrower nest. But that's probably the largest I've seen. Did I ever find out for sure which eaglet at Sauces is the oldest? No, I haven't. I still think the smaller one is the older one, though, and that it's probably a male and the other one is a female. So because females are 25% larger than males, if the second one was female, it could easily overtake the first chick in size. Why don't the chicks have yellow beaks like their parents? They get that as part of the maturation process. So as they get 3.5, 4 years old, they start to get the white head, their beak starts to turn from dark to yellow, their eyes actually start turning from dark to a light cream color. So all these changes take place over about a 2 to 3 year period. Somebody asking how close photographers can venture to a nest without alarming the adults. That really varies with the nest and the adults. For us, generally, we try to keep 800 feet from a nest when we're doing observations, but there are places where the birds are fine with you getting much closer. Generally, if you're below them, they're not as wary as if you're above them. But I would try to stay at least a couple hundred feet away, and if the adults are flying or vocalizing, then you're disturbing them and you need to move away. Okay, somebody asking about my thoughts when I first did the dangling from the helicopter for egg retrieval. I did not know that was part of the job when I applied for it. I came from Southern Illinois, flat land pretty much, sort of scared of heights. So the first time we hooked up to the helicopter, I was 100 feet at the end of a 100-foot tether attached to the bottom of the helicopter, and we'd hooked up to my harness, and then for probably 5-10 minutes we were just sort of moving around, discussing the lift and everything. And when we started, the helicopter took off, got above me, and just put a little bit of tension on the line. The hook had actually worked its way out of my harness as it was just dragging around on the ground. So I got up on my tiptoes and then was released. He had to lower it down, I had to hook back into it, and then we did the lift. So that was sort of my introduction to making sure that you're holding on to the hook to the helicopter the whole time. And if you see any of the videos, I just sort of hold it, keep it above my head until there's tension on the line, and then take off. So it was a bit scary the first time. Actually, the first 10 times or so, I was not real comfortable with it. Somebody saw an eagle steal chicks out of the osprey nest on Explorer. Do they also do that with within their own species? They probably do take chicks that are not being watched over from other eagle nests. We did have one nest on Santa Cruz Island where it wasn't an adult eagle, it was a sub-adult, probably 2 or 3 years old, but it actually attacked the 2 chicks that were on the nest, dragged them both out of the nest, put some punctures in the beak of one chick, and I broke the wing of the other one. We were able to recover both and rehabilitate them and release them, and one of those is still alive. How many chicks, or what's the most that I've seen fledge from a nest? That would be 3 from a couple years of our West End nest. Had 3 chicks successfully fledge. Because we generally don't have food shortages out here, because they're surrounded by water with fish and birds, generally anything that hatches, unless it succumbs to an accident, survives to fledging. How long will adult eagles continue to breed? That's another good question, because usually no one knows how old the birds are. Ours is one of the few projects where we actually know the identity of the adults. We did have attempted breeding at least up through 31 years of age, although she was not successful in hatching eggs the last few years. I think our oldest currently breeding is a 1993 bird. So she's, at 23, 24 years of age. So at least up until their mid-20s, they can successfully breed. Okay, waiting on some more questions. I'm going to go to some that are actually on the Explorer site. somebody worrying about the radiation in the ocean from Fukushima in the fish and then in the eagles. I don't think that's really going to be an issue. Um, there's a difference between detectability and harm. So anything that is picking up radiation currently, it's detectable, but it's not at a harmful level. So I don't really think radiation is going to be an issue. Oh, and that was the next question there. Somebody asking if bald eagles make sure that each chick gets fed during feedings, or do they just feed the closest mouth? And they just feed whoever comes to them for food. So if there's, in the pecking order, the one that's the most aggressive is going to eat first, and if there's food remaining, the younger or less aggressive chicks will also get fed. But feeding all the chicks equally, especially during a low food year, is not a good evolutionary strategy, because you could just starve all your chicks. If you feed whoever comes to you first, you have a higher likelihood of fledging at least one of your chicks. Someone is asking about K10 and K26, which were our pelican harbor birds. We haven't been able to identify them this year. We know that at least one has orange wing tags, so it's one of the two birds likely. Unfortunately, they failed a couple weeks ago, so I'm not sure we can get the opportunity to actually identify the adults this year.